Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this video. My name is John Ingram, and I'm joined here by Mac Hammett, and we're here as part of Whole Man Tribe. And Whole Man Tribe is to facilitate the question of what does it mean to be a man? And our goal is not to have a consensus of opinion, but in fact to have diversity of opinion on that question. So today we're going to be talking about purpose, one's purpose. So when you think about one's purpose, there's this overriding principle that drives and motivates our actions. And as what do we do to get when we get up in the morning? What is that motivation to bring it up? And Mac, when you think about purpose, what comes to mind?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with how you define your core. You know, what makes you special and unique as a man among many other men? You know, what is the one thing that sort of captures the essence of who you are, and in the expression of that, or your gift to the universe? You know, who are you, and what are you supposed to be doing in your life, and how is it even sort of already manifesting itself in the life that you're now living?
And I know from time to time you've brought up the analogy of going to the bank and to try to get some money. And I know that that's near and dear to you when you're talking to people about purpose as well.
Yeah, I get a lot of people that are in quest of their purpose, and they don't quite know even how to begin even thinking about defining the purpose of their life. And so I have this great analogy that if you started a business and you needed $100,000 loan, you would have to go to the bank and ask them to support your business. And they would, their first question would be, so what's your mission statement? So what is your business about? And they would actually require you to write something down that kind of succinctly defines what you're about. And oddly enough, a lot of men that I talk to know all about going to the bank and getting a loan and making that sentence, but I think sort of the other step to take is to make that sentence to yourself. So, you know, who are you, and what are you about? And probably in less than 3 to 4 sentences, you ought to be able to kind of put all that together and make a statement about your identity. Another way of thinking about that, they talk about this often, is just your elevator speech. So, you know, you're in an elevator with a stranger and you introduce yourself and they go, well, you know, who are you, John? And you ought to be able to say in a couple of sentences, you know, who you are. I think very often we men just have a real quick answer that doesn't really tap into our core. Meaning, you know, we say what our job is, we say we're married, I got 3 kids, I live in Florida, and you know, but really defining your purpose moves a little bit deeper than that, and really kind of helps you identify who you are beyond all of the exteriors in your life, but who you are on the interior of your life.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. You know, we define ourselves by these labels. You know, I'm a man, I do this job, I have 3 kids, I like to boat, I like to fish, you know, I have these hobbies. And those are true of what what are some of the labels, but that's not that purpose. That purpose is that higher level that motivates you to, that happens regardless of where you are. Whether you're working or you're playing or you're home with the kids at dinner, whatever that case may be. These are the factors that kind of allow you. I always see it, the purpose is like a filter as well, that you use it like, I've got to make this tough decision. And does that decision go really against my purpose? And again, that's that overriding, as we mentioned earlier in the discussion here, that overriding principle that's over being, a father, a worker, what I do for fun and all that.
Yeah. So I think maybe getting close to defining your purpose, it helps to just begin to start redefining or defining what your values are. What are the factors in your decision-making processes, and of course, again, everybody's different. So I think it's pretty important to sort of label, what are 5 things that shape your decision, and to not cheat in the process. Cheating meaning, the 10 Commandments or the Quran or Christian faith, but rather to go, well, being honest or always telling the truth, or being square with any transaction I make, or being a good father, or what are the ways that you go about processing your life on a daily basis, kind of begins to help you realize what your purpose is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When we think about the defining purpose, I've read a lot that there's kind of three factors. One is it should be concise, it should be short in terms of what your purpose is. You can remember it. Second thing, it needs to be from the heart. There's a lot of purposes you can get in books and stuff like that, but if you don't embody it, if it's not your purpose, then it's not really going to stick when you're looking at that in your life. As they used to say in yoga tradition, it's better to do your dharma poorly than to do another person's dharma perfectly. So it's very easy to find out somebody else's purpose. And as we found out, I think through yoga and obviously through your work as well, Mac, is that if you don't have a purpose, you just get pulled into somebody else's purpose. And so it's so important to have that purpose for your compass for your life. So, and then the third thing is it's unconditional, as we mentioned earlier. It has nothing to do with whether you're working or playing, you're with your family, not with your family. It overrides all those things. And so those are kind of, from my standpoint, the three major things: that it's concise, that it's heartfelt, and that it's unconditional.
Yes. And so you'd be the same person whatever the condition or status of your life or location of your life. So I would like to think, if I won the lottery, I'd still be the same Mac, and I would still make the same decisions. It wouldn't change my heart. And in fact, a lot of people that have won the lottery, because they didn't have a good sense of understanding of who they were, ended up tripping up all over themselves with not knowing how to manage the money. And that happens to a lot of sports athletes. They're in high school or just graduating, and then suddenly they're making a vast amount of money, and then they forget who they are. And I often say that the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my life have to do with me forgetting who I was. And they go, oh, that's not the Mac that your mama raised. That's us.
Exactly.
You went down a whole nother trail, and those decisions are so inconsistent with what you're about. And usually when I make those sentences, it's when I'm in a mess.
Yeah, it's sort of well, that's not me.
Yes.
That's not me. That's not John. And that's exactly when you've gone off track.
Yes.
You're like, I'm not on my principle. I'm not on those that guiding factor that allows me to live my life, because the ultimate purpose allows us to have that life, light, and fullness in our life. Because if we don't have that, we're drifting. And there's no satisfaction, because we don't even have a barometer to say, hey, am I doing what I want to be doing? Is this what I want? Is this not what I want? I remember an analogy that I listened to with a person says, it's like going into your house and you buy a rug that you don't like, and you put a lamp in your house you don't like, and you put in all these things in your house and you don't like, and you're saying here, why are these here? I don't like any of this stuff. But without purpose, you can let stuff into your life that has nothing to do with your purpose, and then you're scratching your head saying, how did I get here?
Right.
And and why did that happen and stuff, which kind of leads into our next things. What are some of the inhibitors to our purpose? What prevents us from getting there?
Well, and I think it kind of connects with what you just said, is that there are so many, we need to don't underestimate the influences that pull us off of our purpose path. So there's so many people out there with voices that are telling us that if we only followed their purpose, that we would be happy. And so we buy or clothe ourselves or move, or we believe we want things that we don't really want because they wanted it, or they want us in that whole concept. So I think our soul gets lost because we're are living other people's lives, and a lot of times people are playing us to their advantage. Not all people are evil, but if you don't have a clear thought about who you are, then a lot of people will take you down a path that really doesn't reflect your heart. So I think you're going to go down those paths if you don't do this original work and go, well, who am I and what am I about?
Yeah.
So I think, we kind of have a better vision of that when we're children, and it kind of shows up in elementary school. And then all of a sudden, all these people start telling us how to do and how to be. And we have to sort through all of these external messages. And finally, somewhere in our mid-20s to mid-30s, we go, no, this is who I am. And I don't have to live up to anybody else's expectations, including my mom and dad. I have to live up to my own expectations. And,
Right.
and again, that's embracing your values, your sense of worth, and your sense of purpose. So a lot of people I see are living, they're just trapped in other people's expectations of who they're supposed to be. And it's not satisfying. It ultimately makes you anxious and depressed because you're not.
I mean, it causes breakups in relationships, and dissatisfied with our life, and also dissatisfied with how things go with our, all our relationships, with our own relationship and the relationship with those around us. So I think that's critical.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's an inhibiting factor as well, that, well, it's complicated? I don't need to know my purpose. I know who I am. I do this, I'm this way. And, and why do I need a purpose, as part of my life here?
Well, I think a significant number of us are wanting to please the people that we love. So we end up being accommodating, and that's how we define loving another person, is trying to make another person happy.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They lose the opportunity of trying to make us happy. So I kind of have this analogy that you need to invite people into your castle with your pictures and your decorations and the way that you are, and say, this is what I have to offer you. And if they come in and go, well, we're going to redecorate your castle, that's probably not a good partner. You need
Probably
somebody
not.
who
Yeah.
loves you for who you are. But in the core, you need to love yourself for who you are and go, this is my offering. This is what I have to give to the world, and this is what I have to give to another person. So a lot of us get trapped in living a life of expectations instead of just appreciating how we were created and being grateful for who we are, instead of being overly critical and thinking that we don't measure up. Measure up to what? We need to measure up to being me. We don't need to measure up to anybody else's expectations of what we're supposed to be.
Which leads to a good point, Mac, is one of selflessness and being. Many people, when they start working on their purpose, they start, well, that's selfish of me to think that way, and that can inhibit as well, because if you to thine self be true, right? If you're not being truthful for yourself on what you feel your purpose is, and you feel, well, it's selfish to think that I want to be this or that this is, then it's inhibited in terms of your purpose, because there's no way to let yourself shine through, as it were.
Yeah. So I really think the whole work is an effort to make you a generous person instead of a consumer of other people. You really define yourself and go, this is how I'm going to make the world a better place, or make my relationships better. I'm going to offer me out there to enrich other people's lives in whatever way you define that to be. It doesn't have to be so spiritual or esoteric. I mean, carpenters and truck drivers and yoga teachers, or whatever it is that got you in the expression of yourself, it's really important for you to offer it, to be generous. So it's not selfish. It's just the opposite of being selfish.
Yeah, being selfless to oneself for that higher purpose.
Become a giver. But you can't be a giver until you know what your gift is, or at least you claim it.
Exactly.
And until you do that work, then you're just getting information from everyone else.
And I like how, that's a good point. That purpose also is staking the claim of who I stand for, what I stand for, what my life is. And that's so important. Especially, it becomes most important when things are difficult. It's easy when life is good, to be able to do purpose. It's a totally different thing when life happens when you're making plans, as they say, right? And when the principle becomes really critical is when crisis occurs, and you're saying that stuff that you didn't have any control over, maybe. And if you abandon your principles at that point, that's usually where things kind of go awry as well.
And you don't have a chance unless you know what your principles are.
Exactly.
And so there's I think for all of us, there are at least a dozen times in life where we go, I could have gone left, or I could have gone right. And I did a take, and I knew that being honest was at my core. So I chose to be honest, and I didn't go down that trail. So, that could be negatively expressed. But I think when you know your core, it gets tested, I guess is what you are trying to say.
Yeah.
And your life gets measured by how we pass the test.
Right. Exactly. And I think for people as well is that they think, oh, once I've got that purpose, it's locked in stone, and it can change. As you change, as you get older, you'll find that purpose changes as well. the purpose that you have in your 20s is very different than the purpose in your 40s, 50s, even as you get older into retirement. So I think that it's evolving, but at the same time, it's done with forethought, that you're not just randomly, well, today I'm going to have my purpose is this, tomorrow my purpose is going to be that.
Yeah.
It's that's really where it comes to play. So I think just to kind of wrap up, for those who are listening to this, this talk, and where do you begin? What tips, do we provide just to get started on one's purpose?
Yeah,
And
I do really believe that there is some clarity in our childhood, and it's, I think, important to just remember your original self, and what was making you tick, what brought you joy. Were you wandering around in nature? Were you selling lemonade at a lemonade stand, or were you the arguer in the classroom? What were the things that were coming to you early on, before you even were defining your identity, to just kind of do some general assessment of the person that you were before you got wounded, or before people laid expectations on you. What was little John about?
yeah, for example, yeah. So it's kind of like journaling in a way, to kind of get a framework of where you were, and then I guess you would also talk about where you are now, like what you see, what's the idealized. I don't want to use idealized self, but sort of that. What is it that you stand for in terms of your future self as well? What do you want people to remember you by as such?
Yeah. So I get men that I work with to just write on a one sheet of paper their idealized self. What do they weigh? What are they wearing? What do they look like as if they're standing on a hill somewhere? And what are their connections? And how do they define themselves as a human being in the world? Just idealize. If everything clicked and everything was working for you, this is the image of me. And then second part of that is, so where am I right now? So I got my idealized me. Well, what's the real me? So if the idealized Mac on the hill is tall and thin, and the real Mac of today is a little bit overweight, then there's a gap between who I want to be and who I am. And in that place in the middle is where we're all doing our work, where we kind of go, if I want to say that I have a whole lot of friends, and my reality is I'm not really talking to anybody these days because of COVID, then I'm going, oh, well, I need to start writing letters and making phone calls if I'm ever going to get to be the idealized person I want to be.
Right.
Or, if I want to be a great father, and my reality is I'm working all the time, gosh, maybe I need to rearrange my schedule and spend some more time with my kids. So I think there's a lot of clarity that can happen to you if you just do those two steps. What would be the perfect expression of you, and then an honest assessment of whether you're there or not.
Right.
And there it all is.
There it is. It's shining right there. Yeah, exactly. So then the to kind of the third thing that I work with people is talking about core values. What are, what's the 5 to 10 things that you consider your values? You can even call them your no-goes as such, or the things that you say, I stand for this. And again, running it through that reality filter, that say, I stand for this. Am I really following this?
Yeah.
And then where is it in the middle? And those 3 parts that we've just talked about, like taking that assessment of what we were as a child, taking that assessment of our idealized self versus our real self, and then taking that third part, writing it down of what's our ideal core values and what's our, how do we grade ourselves without being too critical, being honest with ourselves. Those three components kind of give us that metric of where's that purpose in there. So that's kind of the soup to pull from. Because without those kind of things, without those kind of tools, you basically are just kind of like, well, I'm going to guess what my principle is, or I'm just going to take something from a book, and that's not heartfelt, because it gets back to what we talked about before, where it should be concise, it should be heartfelt, and it needs to be unconditional. So,
yeah.
So for those listening, these are tools that we have. Obviously, there's numerous other tools, because as we say, we're not trying to find consensus here. We're trying to offer things that we found in our experience that help with purpose. And so it's kind of to wrap it up, that our purpose is our overriding, motivating principles that allow us to come up with actions, how our conduct is, how we want to live our life. This purpose allows us to have that rich and fulfilling life, because when we know what our purpose is, we know when we're not following our purpose. So we're not just drifting through life, we're actually embodying that enriched life. That we have a number of things that inhibit that purpose. We're our own self-enemy when it comes to that. And if we don't get around those inhibiting factors, we'll end up following somebody else's purpose, which doesn't provide for a very fulfilling life. In fact, it could be very confining and painful. And then lastly, tools that we found by taking that kind of structure of looking at like what you were as a child, what we see as ourselves, both ideal and our reality. And then lastly, what is our core values, and how do we measure up to those kind of being the materials, the building blocks to be able to come up with that purpose. And then from there, find out what your purpose is, what motivates you to even listen to this talk today. So we, as we both have, as doing this work, we find that it's graceful acceptance. We come with gratitude to offer our thoughts, and we offer you grace and well wishes to be able to find your purpose and where you need to be in your life. If you enjoyed this talk, by all means, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel as we offer more things of what it means to be a man through Whole Man Tribe. So thank you very much for listening.